Alright, today we're going to be working on a 2008 Cadillac Escalade Ext, and I'm going to show you how to install a completely new rear entertainment system. We're going to be installing a Rockville 13-inch overhead monitor with a built-in DVD player, a USB port, and an HDMI port. Here's a look at it here. It's got a couple LED lights on it also. And here's a look at where I'm going to be mounting this new overhead monitor. So there's currently no rear entertainment system here, just the overhead lights. And here's what it's going to look like when I'm all done. And I'm also going to be wiring the rear and front monitors together. So I'm going to start with removing my rear lights here. There's going to be just two clips that hold it in place. You just pull on it hard there and it'll pop right out. Then there'll be one wire harness down clip right there. Next, I'm going to be cutting everything that's raised on the light housing here. Unfortunately, I cannot use these wires for a power source. Being that they're tied into a dimmer switch, they will not work properly for the DVD player. So this will not be used, and I'm just going to stuff it up here in the lining so I don't damage it when I make my cuts. And also you want to put a sheet, a tarp, or some plastic down to protect your seats, because you're going to be cutting and it's going to make a pretty big mess. I'm going to be using a multi-tool here to make my cuts. I'm simply just going to cut the outline of the light housing here all the way around, making sure I'm just doing nice shallow cuts so I don't cut any of the metal up above. So make sure not to cut any deeper than 3/8 of an inch, and that'll keep you from cutting any of the metal. Now it's time to install the mounting bracket for the monitor. So this installs first, and then the monitor attaches to this bracket. And I'll be using 1/2-inch screws to mount this. There is a small void here, about 3/4 of an inch, so we should be safe with 1/2-inch screws. And here's a look at it up close here. The raised ridges of this give you about a 1/2-inch void. So you only want to mount the screws where the metal protrudes the most. So I'm just using some 1/2-inch self-tapping screws. That gets me through the metal nice and easy there. Then you want to make necessary measurements, make sure it's nice and square before you put the remaining screws in. Alright, so now we got this all secured. Now it's time to start doing some wiring. Here's a look at the back side of the monitor. It comes with a set of video inputs, a set of video outputs, and a power and a ground wire. So we're going to start with running the composite cables first, and what we're going to do is we're going to follow the outline of the sunroof here and start heading towards the front of the vehicle. So to route our wiring, we're going to have to remove the trim for the sunroof here. It's very easy to pull out. You just pop out the front first, and then the sides, and then the back is in a channel. It just pulls straight forward after that. Also, you should open the sunroof by doing this. That'll make it much easier to take it out. So here's a look at where we're running the wiring. So I've actually loosened 2 screws on my mounting bracket here. That way I can fit some wires through it right now. And we're going to pull down on the headliner here and stuff the wires through. So I'm going to be running 2 sets of composite cables, an input and an output. So we're just going to do the same thing with both sets here. Now we're going to start stuffing the wiring along the edge of the sunroof material here. So there's already a void that exists up here for running wiring, so it's a perfect place to be running the wiring. So the Cadillac Escalades come stock with curtain airbags, so you want to be very careful not to puncture the airbags. So the safest route is to route to the center light console up here first, and that'll keep us away from all the airbags that are located on the top, left, and right of the ceiling. So to remove the front light console here, you just need to start with popping out the light lens here. You can use a small screwdriver, and that'll pop right out, and that'll give you access to some torque head screws located in there. There'll be 2 of them to remove. Once you have both screws removed, there'll be 2 clips holding it in place still. So you simply just pull firmly down on the console and it'll pop right out. Now we're just going to leave that hanging there and continue running the wires. So I'm going to run the composite cables the rest of the way through there until they pop through that center console hole in the front. Now I'm going to run my power and ground wires. I'm going to run 2 wires, one for the ground, one for the power. And that's going to follow the same route as the composite cables there. And I'm going to make that pop out in that front center console also. So now that we got the cables run to the front console here, now we can go ahead and put up the trim for the sunroof. We start with pushing in the back first, then pop in the sides, and then the front into place. And now that the wires are in, we can go ahead and secure that mounting bracket back in place. Go ahead and put those 2 screws back in. Now we're going to start doing the wiring for the rear monitor. So we're going to start with hooking up the power and the ground wire here. And if the wires you ran aren't the same color, make sure you mark them so you don't get them mixed up. Then we're going to be plugging in the composite cables here. Make sure you haven't marked which is in and out on the cables you ran so you know which one to hook up to. Now I'm just going to be twisting the wires together and sealing them with electrical tape. It's my preferred method because it saves space, but if you want to use butt connectors, that'll work too. Now we're going to be securing the monitor to the base here. There's going to be 5 different screw locations where we can secure it to. And you want to make sure to tuck your wires nice and neat, make sure they're not by any screw holes and they're not sticking out anywhere. So the first screw will be kind of hard to line up. Once you get that first screw in, the rest of them will go fairly easy because it'll be somewhat lined up after that. So you want to make sure you get screws in all 4 corners there, and then there'll be one more in the middle. So for the power and ground for the overhead monitor, I'm going to be tying into the garage door opener here up front. It unclips from the back here, and that's what powers this right here. So there's going to be a red and black wire on here, and we're going to tie into both of those. So the red wire that goes to this clip is a 12-volt power, and the black wire is a ground. So we're just going to tie into both of those, and then seal them off with tape, and then plug it back in. And by doing it this way, you're not going to lose any functionality of the garage door opener. We're just using it for a power source. Now we need to run the wiring from here to the stereo. So we're going to head down the liner and then down the side over here. To remove this side panel, you're going to pop off a cap on the very top of it there, and that gives you access to a 7mm screw. Once you remove that, there'll be one clip at the bottom you'll have to pull firmly to pop that out. Once the panel's popped out, you're going to have to unplug the speaker wire clip that's at the bottom of it. You can just unclip that by hand, and then the panel's loose. Now I'm going to run 2 more sets of composite cables here from the front light opening to the stereo. So I made an extra connection here with the composite cables that wasn't necessary, but I did it so if I want to hook up anything in the future, I can access these cables easily. If you want to run just one set of composite cables from the rear to the front, you're going to need 2 20-foot cables. So we're going to route the wires across the top of the windshield here, inside the headliner, and then down the side over here. So we need to carefully route the wires inside the headliner there. They should push right in there, there's enough void. Now we're going to route them down the side, but before we do that, we need to tuck them down the side of the dash here. There'll be a hole on the side of the dash there where you're going to be able to slip the wires right through. Then there's going to be a fuse panel on the side there you're going to pop off to route the wires the rest of the way through. So you're going to carefully route the wires the rest of the way down there, and they should end up popping out down by the emergency brake. Now that we got them routed this far, it's time to remove the stereo. So to remove the stereo, we got to start by popping off the panels. So we're going to remove that center panel, that side panel, and the center console panel. And to remove these panels, you're going to want to buy a set of plastic pry bar tools designed for removing dash panels. These will keep you from damaging any of your interior. You can find these tools at your local automotive store. So I'm going to start with removing the side panel here. There's about 6 clips that hold it into place. Now I'm going to remove the center console panel. You should be able to do this just by opening the cup holder compartment and pulling up firmly on the back here, and that'll pop it loose in the back. Then pull up on the front firmly also, and that'll pop it loose up front. Now we need to lift the center storage compartment there and lift this the rest of the way out. There's going to be 1 wire harness we need to unplug for the cigarette lighter. You should be able to just unplug that by hand and set that to the side. Now it's time to remove the stereo panel. We're going to be using our plastic pry bar and prying at multiple points all the way around. This is the hardest panel to remove, so take your time so you do not break the panel. Now I have it loose, there's going to be 2 wire harnesses we have to unplug. Here's a better look at it. You're going to unplug this wire harness right here, and this one on this side also. Now it's loose and we can set that to the side. The stereo itself is going to be secured with 6 screws, located right here. So we're going to go ahead and remove those. Once all the screws are removed, we're going to go ahead and slide that forward, and it's time to unhook some wire harnesses. So there's going to be quite a few different things we have to unhook on the back side of this. We got the antenna wire there, the satellite cable, and 3 different wire harness clips on the bottom there. So we're going to start with just pulling firmly on the antenna cable there, that pulls out, then unclip the satellite cable. Now there's 3 different harnesses we're going to unclip. And now the stereo should be loose. We can set that to the side. Now that the stereo is removed, we can go ahead and route the composite cables to the stereo compartment. So we're going to route those up and over the steering column and into the stereo compartment area. So there's a closer look at them. Now they're routed right where they need to be. Now I'm going to put my side panel back together, but before I do that, I'm going to tape the wires I ran to the existing wire harness that's already there. And here's a look at one of the side airbags there. We want to make sure we're nice and clear of that and that nothing's obstructing it. Now we're going to go ahead and put that panel back on. And for the top console panel, I'm going to join the two composite cables together. I'm going to use a female by female connection to join the connections. Now I'm going to carefully stuff the wires in the hole here and secure the light console back in place. There's no video input for the stock stereo, so I'm going to be using a device called the Lockpick. This device has a lot of cool features. It's going to allow me to have video inputs, video outputs. It also allows you to have DVD in motion, meaning you can watch DVDs on the front screen while you're driving, even though that's not safe. It also has an iPod hookup for iPod control. And there's no extra wiring needed, it's just a simple plug and play installation. So it just plugs into your stock radio wire harness clips, and then the other end of it plugs into the radio. So the installation of the Lockpick is very fast and easy. So here's a look at it after it's all hooked up. So for DVD video output from the main stereo, I'm going to be installing another cable. I'm going to be using a GM rear entertainment retention cable. And here's a quick description of what it does. So basically what this allows me to do is if I'm watching a movie on the front screen, it'll broadcast on the rear screen also. So this cable plugs directly in the back of the radio, and it has some video inputs and video outputs. The video inputs are not compatible unless you have factory rear entertainment already. So this clip is going to plug in right in the back of the stereo there. It's going to plug in that last spot. That last spot's what's used for the factory rear entertainment. So even though it didn't have stock rear entertainment, the DVD video output works perfect. So the other end of the wire harness doesn't plug into anything, and I'm only going to be using the video outputs. Alright, we got everything hooked up, so it's time to put everything back together. Be real careful when you're putting your stereo back in not to damage any wires. Make sure all the wires are tucked nice and neat. And also I should mention I did test everything before I put it back together. Okay, we got everything back together. It's looking good again. Here's a look at the overhead monitor. Here's a couple features on it. So it has some built-in inputs here. It has an SD card slot. You can load movies or play games from this slot. It also has an HDMI input. You can hook up an external device like a Roku stick or a Fire Stick. It has a USB port, so you can play games or watch movies from this also. So it actually has a built-in Nintendo emulator. So if you load some Nintendo ROMs onto a flash drive or a memory card, you can play those on this. And it also has some built-in LED lights, and those turn on from the back there. They're not super bright, but they get the job done. And you can load DVDs from the opposite side over here. That's where you load the DVDs in. Alright, it's time to power this thing up and check it out. So right now I'm loading a DVD on the rear monitor, and it will display on the front monitor also with the way I have this hooked up. So whenever you're watching DVD back there, you can watch it up front also. So here's a quick look at the flash drive menu. I got about 6 movies loaded on the flash drive, plus about every Nintendo ROM ever made is loaded on this also. So let's go ahead and check out one of the games. So we're going to test out Super Mario Bros. 3. And again, whatever you're watching back here is going to broadcast up front. And you can hook up external devices like the Roku, like I talked about earlier. So if you want to watch Hulu or Netflix, you can. And also, if you want to load a DVD up on the front, you can make that display on the rear screen also. And I will be releasing a video specifically about the Rockville monitor to show more specs and more things it can do. And I'll be releasing a video about the Lockpick that I hooked up also. Well, this is C.L.S. All in One. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe.